Next up, Russ and I review Kill Bill Volume 2.
I have a few unanswered questions.
Welcome back to 4K Kings. My name is Matt.
And I am Russ.
And we are back again today, Russ, with another review. This time, Kill Bill Volume 2. The 2004 follow-up to our Kill Bill 1 review.
I assumed it was connected to Kill Bill Volume 1 in some way.
In some way, shape, or form, they're connected. Volume 2, the martial arts action film about the bride who continues her campaign of revenge against Bill, who tried to kill her and her unborn child. Still not cool. And this review is in honor of the recent 4K upgrade of Kill Bill. And if you've seen our Kill Bill Volume 1 video, you'll know that this one's pretty much the exact same.
Wouldn't that be crazy if the quality was just
better,
superb on Volume 2 and it was like, oh, here's the damn Blu-ray for Volume 1.
So we will come back to talk about the transfer, the features, and more very soon. But first, let's dive into our thoughts on Volume 2 of Kill Bill. So this is a 2004 film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. This film arrived 6 months after Kill Bill Volume 1 and nearly 7 years after Jackie Brown. Is that right? 7 years?
It did come out in 97, but it was Christmas Day of 97.
So more like a 98.
So most people saw it in early 1998. Don't you remember that year, the whole Christmas promotional run about Santa's got a brand new bag to play on the James Brown song?
I do remember that now.
But this Christmas, Santa's got a brand new bag.
Much like the first one, it's an homage to these 70s sort of martial arts exploitation, spaghetti western type films. This one, however, in my opinion, and I'm assuming everyone's opinion, is a little bit more on the spaghetti western side of things than it is the martial arts side of things. Once again, this stars Uma Thurman, Daryl Hannah, Michael Madsen, and David Carradine. This film was a success, winning over critics and audiences, despite the switch to a more story-driven approach than the first one. I kind of would have assumed that maybe people that really loved the first one, which again was very accessible and probably brought out people that weren't necessarily coming for Quentin Tarantino. They were coming for what is this badass action movie, and now they want to come and they want to see Volume 2. People like you and I are probably like, oh yeah, that was great. But people that only are really coming into this from Kill Bill 1's perspective might have not enjoyed this one as much. That was my thought.
I think they're both equally appreciated by casuals.
I agree.
I actually know a person who hates Quentin Tarantino movies, all of them, but they love Kill Bill. Now, I'm a shallow prick. I prefer Volume 1, so I guess I don't fall in that camp.
It's weird. I feel like I like Volume 2 more than Volume 1, but I do have more nitpicks about Volume 2 than I've got for not Volume 1.
I'm going to make you see the light. That right there should tell you everything of which one's better. That's why I'm so curious to see the whole bloody affair. I would love to see the big, epic one film with all these scenes edited in a different order of what it was intended to be. I'm sure it's mind-blowing in that way.
I bet.
You know what's funny? A similar thing happened with Grindhouse. I think everybody latched on to Planet Terror, and then by the time Death Proof came on, which slowed the momentum down, people just naturally were like, eh. I'm not saying Volume 2 is Death Proof, but I think that's a little bit of what happened with me with this volume situation.
It doesn't have that same energy at all.
Yes, and I dare I say in certain moments needed it.
Baby, you ain't kidding.
I think when you take his dialogue-driven stuff and his violence and action and all that kind of stuff, and you suck them into two different volumes versus letting them get cut and live and breathe together, it is a very different experience. That's the part about Quentin Tarantino that I like the most. His writing and his dialogue and his character-driven stuff and the way that the stories are progressing, all the violence and the way that he portrays all that stuff on screen is some of the best I've ever seen as well. And when you combine the two things, that's what makes it great. When I'm just watching a film like Volume 1, which is kind of just that material, while it's excellent, I miss these quieter moments, and I miss the time for characters to develop and interact and relish the conversations. That's why I love Hateful Eight so much, because it's just characters talking with one another, which sounds boring as shit, but for a lot of people it probably is. But for me, I love that stuff.
But in Hateful Eight, even, you get the violence. He's going to deliver you those moments, but you're going to get the dialogue as well. And I think the way this was done, Volume 2 unintentionally ends up suffering a bit. The imbalance of release versus the dialogue.
The time it takes to get to the release.
Yes, it is just off in this. And like I said, I think as one film, as a Sergio Leone style epic. I think it would be balanced out more. And I think, holy shit, I mean, we all love what it is now. I think that had potential to be just on another plateau.
Yeah, and I think too, in Volume 1, it's a lot of Uma Thurman going from scene to scene, situation to situation, and you're kind of touching base with a lot of different people overall. But in here, they spend a lot of time with just certain people, like the Bud character early on. Like, you're at his place of business, like seeing the shit jobs that he's got to do. He's talking to his boss, and you got him talking to Daryl Hannah's character. You got him talking to that little graveyard fellow that's his friend. Even the last hour of this movie is basically just Uma Thurman and Bill having a conversation. Like, literally, the last hour is like family time.
But it's so weird, the juxtaposition. If I'm looking at them as two separate movies, it's like I'm watching her in the first one be an unstoppable killing machine, and then now all of a sudden it kind of feels like it switches really quick into, wait, you're weak now all of a sudden. I think if it was edited differently, if I saw some of these shades in Volume 1, it would have felt more fleshed out. But what happens is I saw someone give a great performance, but the way it had to be edited and released, you get the action here and the dialogue drama here. And it is jarring, I think.
You're right. That was my takeaway too, is that, in the first movie, she's like a brutal killer, but in this one, she's struggling. Like, she's training, she's learning, she's coming to terms with that her daughter's still alive. More of an emotional, vulnerable journey, whereas the first one, that vulnerability is not there at all. Even the soundtrack, I think you were kind of alluding as a joke that it's your least favorite soundtrack. I was watching this whole movie and I was like, where is the soundtrack? Like, where are the musical cues? There's like nothing. There's nothing that even comes on. It's very solemn. It's not fun at all.
Soundtrack wise, the only track I remember really digging was the don 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 don. Which is her just giving the preface, the beginning of the movie, just in case you didn't see Volume 1, basically. The rest of it, though, for a Tarantino soundtrack, it's incredibly weak. Even that Malcolm McLaren cover of Nobody Told Me About Her, like, I don't like it.
Didn't like it. Yeah. No, I didn't really care for it. And I think the other thing that shines a little bit more in this movie than in the first one is the supporting cast. You get to spend a lot more time with other people, like Michael Madsen, like Daryl Hannah, like Bill. You see him for the very first time. Even that Gordon Liu character, Pai Mei, like he's hilarious and sort of like, vicious at the same time, but him with that beard, which makes like a joke. And Michael Madsen's good too. He's given his Michael Madsen energy.
He's good in it too.
I know, and I like how they make him just like a total friggin' loser.
What do you want, Mr. Blonde?
I want Mr. Blonde back. I do want to shout out though Michael Parks, Earl McGraw. That's his name, I think, is the sheriff who's from Dusk Till Dawn, and he's in Volume 1. And in this volume, he's playing, Bill's surrogate, like dad or whatever, Esteban Viejo, like an older Spanish gentleman.
Yes.
Dude, that character is so awesome.
It is.
It's the suavest shit. They are so tight on his face. You see like all of his features and it's just so brilliantly done.
It is. And I don't want to be anywhere else but on that man's face.
I am susceptible to flattery.
And the last thing, also, just the finale itself. So we've spent 2 movies getting to the showdown. And I feel like it was earned. I feel like, how they build it up and how it all takes place. I feel like it was a great finale and an ending to the story and to these 2 characters.
I've heard people who disagree with this ending, who didn't like it.
Okay.
I understand it. I think for it being an ending to Volume 2, it fits in with everything that Volume 2 is. But if that's the ending to Volume 1, maybe that ending is a little weak compared to what Volume 1 is.
And I think that's also an interesting thing to think if it was one movie and that was the ending, does it still connect because of how things would then be put together?
But again, I think the emotional tone would have been woven in different ways to where it still would have worked.
It's like when you see Volume 2, you also kind of watch Volume 1 again in your own mind and you see it as one big movie.
I feel like prior to the settling, that was the real showdown. It was them emotionally explaining like why you did what you did, how we got to this place, where we're at as a couple, as a partnership. We both know we've got to take this till the end, but at least that finale is more of them coming to an understanding that they needed closure on their relationship, which again is not some big flashy thing like her in the snow with Ober and Ishii, but it's still pretty cool.
It works. I can't nitpick that. I can't. I'm not in that camp, but I understand.
Overall, I really enjoy this volume, and I think this is something that I maybe enjoy a little bit more than volume 1, but it does have a few things that I think I scratch my head a little bit on, which I'd like to hear your thoughts.
To me, Daryl Hannah has Samuel L. Jackson syndrome in this movie. Sometimes in Quentin Tarantino movies, it appears and feels as though the actor is acting in a Quentin Tarantino movie. I saw it a lot in Death Proof. To me, Daryl Hannah is doing that, particularly in volume 2. She's barely in the first one.
Yeah.
It's not as natural for me, her performance. It doesn't flow. The eye patch doesn't help, I'm sure, like the way she's presented. I want to extend an olive branch here.
Yeah.
But I just think out of every character in these films, she feels the most superficial. I feel like she doesn't blend as much as any of the other cast members.
I think it does take a certain type of actor to portray Quentin Tarantino's characters so that it doesn't come across like that. I will say I agree with you on Daryl Hannah, and I will also say I felt the same way about David Carradine at the end. And
hold on. We did not talk about that previously, but that's my other beef.
Tarantino for these films was really feeling himself in a lot of ways. You could tell he was like in his glory. And I feel like the same thing about his dialogue in this movie. He's got great dialogue in every movie. That's one of his strengths. But in this one, the flashiness that comes along with it, I feel like was dialed up a little bit extra. And I feel like even for anybody, it's going to be hard to keep up with a whole monologue about Superman's special, like how he is like different than Spider-Man and all these other characters, or some of the shit he had Daryl Hannah saying. Like, you have no choice other than to come across sounding like a dumbass if you're not Samuel L. Jackson. There was some dialogue that I feel like was like, wow, this is super Tarantino-y, and these people just can't keep up. Why I felt that way with David Carradine was, in volume 1, he's off screen, but you feel his presence, you hear his voice, and he feels very dangerous. When you meet him in this one at the very end, it's almost like he turns into like a cartoonish comic book villain.
Grandpa.
Which in a way is kind of ironic because he starts telling this story about comic books and how he's a big comic book fan and all this kind of stuff.
It's kind of like, why would you follow this dude in the first place?
Yeah, it was,
like, everyone else is more badass than the guy who's like the leader of them all.
I know, and they have a couple of moments where they try to still show that he's a little ferocious with some looks he gives, especially with like the truth serum dart.
Gotcha.
It just kind of seems like cartoonish out of nowhere. It might be a little too much.
So this might be a little too inside baseball, but while this was getting made, I was fully aware before it came out that the role was written for Warren Beatty. And I'm a big Warren Beatty fan. Even back then, I love Bonnie and Clyde. I love Bulworth. I love Bugsy. I love every movie that starts with the letter B. When I saw Volume 2 and I'm watching David Carradine deliver these lines, the whole time in my head, I'm like, holy shit, I can see Warren Beatty doing this.
Like crushing it.
He would have had a little more, I believe Uma Thurman would have a kid with you.
Yeah.
You know, David Carradine deserved a career boost as well, but I feel like Beatty would have been more in that John Travolta category of maybe this could have elevated his career. He wasn't interested. He turned it down. I forget why. Usually in a Quentin Tarantino movie, it is effortlessly cool. And Daryl Hannah and David Carradine do not come across as effortlessly cool.
Yeah.
In no way do I think Daryl Hannah or David Carradine ruined this movie.
No.
It's just more of a minor nitpick to where maybe I could have seen this working better.
Yeah.
You know, but not ruining it. Still a great watch.
No, I said I'd do my best. That's hardly a promise.
So when Volume 2 came out, Quentin Tarantino, he kept talking about how he was going to make more of these and wanted to keep this series going for a while.
It was going to be Vivica A. Fox's daughter who was going to grow up and hunt down the bride.
And what I want to do is tell the story of Vivica Fox's daughter, Nikki. All right, she spent the last 15 years getting ready to go and kill the bride. All right, and then I'm going to follow her journey as she tries to go and track Uma down and kill her.
He wanted to do that movie. He wanted to do an anime movie. And he also, I think, commented at some point that Kill Bill Volume 3 would be his 9th movie. And that never, came to pass. All that, obviously not history, but we still want the whole bloody affair. I would love to see it one day. Even if I didn't like it, I would just love to see what it could have been.
If it's all good, then it's all good, all right,
So after this, Quentin Tarantino went on to do Death Proof, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained, Hateful Eight, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and we're currently waiting for his 10th and final film.
Correct.
Uma Thurman had a falling out with Quentin Tarantino after this movie, which didn't really come to light until like way later. She got into a car accident on set of Kill Bill Volume 2 after saying that she wanted her stunt person to do this for her, and Quentin Tarantino was like, no, you should just do this, no big deal. It's just, you're just driving down the street or whatever. I guess he basically convinced her to do it. she got in the car, she did the stunt, crashed, and then resulted in permanent injuries after that. And I think Quentin Tarantino, following that, went on record saying that was like his biggest regret of his life in pressuring her to do that stunt.
Director Quentin Tarantino breaking his silence. Actress Uma Thurman claiming she was permanently damaged when he pressured her to perform a stunt for the film Kill Bill.
Can we amend one part of that story? It does sound terrible, and I'm not making an excuse for Tarantino, but do you know one thing he did do?
What did he do?
He personally got in the car and did it himself first. He did more than I think most would do, where he was like, okay, if you're apprehensive, I'm going to do it first just to make sure.
Yeah.
Now, shit happens. You can't just make sure on that. But I do want to kind of just add that to it, because I always felt like the way that story came across, it felt like, oh, mean director forcing someone to do something they don't want to do, where it was like they were friends. It was like, here, I'll show you that it's safe, but then it was not for her, which still is ultimately on his watch. Don't get me wrong.
I think for a long time there was some rift between them, but they've discussed like maybe working together. It'd be awesome to see her in his 10th film.
As for that crash, Thurman says she is proud of Tarantino for eventually giving her that footage.
So if you watched our Volume 1 video at this point, there's really not going to be anything new to say here as far as this release is concerned. It's obviously coming from Lionsgate. There was a regular, there was a steelbook. This has been out on Blu-ray, DVD, VHS, and fans were really hoping for a solid upgrade 4K restoration. But unfortunately, unlike Reservoir Dogs, unlike Pulp Fiction, unlike Jackie Brown, this has not gotten really the love that people really wanted for this. Like, the reviews I've read haven't been great. The people that have reached out to us or commented have been really upset that this wasn't even done from a original camera negative type deal. It's just like an upconvert from some 2K master.
It was sourced from a Betamax.
I've never owned this until now. I think it looks fine. It does not look ultra clean, ultra crisp, or revitalized in any way that I would expect. They just kind of look fairly basic to me, both of them.
Yes, they do.
And I've seen a lot of people that just say you can keep your Blu-ray, that kind of stuff. I don't have anything to compare it against.
I have something to compare it against.
Okay.
Even if you don't, I think right now, Jackie Brown just came out.
True.
It looks phenomenal, and it's impossible to not compare these two releases now. One positive note I do want to say, let's face it, for a subpar restoration, they really did knock it out of the park with this newly commissioned artwork.
They did.
This new artwork is fantastic. Usually we complain about new artwork. It's like, yo, just go with the original art, don't mess with it. But damn, especially on Volume 2, that cover is beautiful.
Yeah, Volume 2 cover is my favorite because it goes back to what I said about Uma in Volume 1, which we didn't touch on too much here, because in Volume 2, like we said, she's struggling, she's dirty, she's like buried alive. She's really just on this, path to try to get to the end, whereas in the first, she's like glowing. She looks like a golden goddess basically the whole time, and that's kind of what she looks like right here.
My only complaint is I wanted Sam Jackson on the piano in there, man.
It's disappointing to hear that this is what we ended up receiving from a transfer perspective. It's a shame that we can't get something that's a little bit better or what the fans were really hoping for, but alas, here we are now still waiting for our Quentin Tarantino box set. We're now giving them an opportunity to do the right thing when they put the box set out to upgrade these for us.
Yes, and when we all escape from Matt's dream, we're going to be watching these releases of Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2.
Dude, if we didn't have this channel, I probably wouldn't have even bought these. I probably would still be waiting for the box set.
Damn, that's dedication. God forbid, if you pass before I do and that happens, your gravesite, tears running down my face, setting a Tarantino box set, and I'm gonna give you a 4K King salute and walk away.
Put them together, take them apart. It's a great movie for the kids. Excellent series, Volume 1, Volume 2, great films. Whether you like Volume 1 more, Volume 2 more, whatever, they're both great. Watch them back to back. Cut them together yourself. Make your own bloody affair at home if you want. If you have not seen either of these films, what are you waiting for? I mean, if you're a Tarantino fan, what are you waiting for? If you're an even action or martial arts fan, what are you waiting for? Spaghetti Western fan, what are you waiting for?
Daryl Hannah fan. You can wait.
Thank you for watching this video. Check out some more of our reviews. We live stream every other Wednesday.
That's right.
We've got lists. We've got reviews. We've got physical media news. We've got Russ. We've got Matt.
All of that is factually accurate.
Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.
Oh, come on, let's do it again.